Hi, my name is Tony, and today we're going to take a look at creating some 3D motion graphics using Fusion inside of DaVinci Resolve. Now, I'm going to assume that you have a good understanding of the basic layout of Fusion, how to use nodes, how they work, and how to set some keyframes and do some basic animation. If you need to, go back and watch the intro to Fusion on the blackmagicdesign.com website. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have. I'm going to go ahead and load up the Fusion 17 lesson part 3. Now, for the most part, when we have been accessing Fusion inside of Resolve, we've been doing it through the edit page. And we put our playhead over the clip that we want to work on and then step right into Fusion. But there might be some situations where you don't need to have access to an edit page. You just want to go straight into Fusion. And you can do that. We can actually go and create our own Fusion composition by right-clicking right inside of our bin. So let's do that. And then go to New Fusion Composition. Let's go ahead and just give this a name. And I'm good with the duration and I'm good with the frame rate, so I'm going to go ahead and press Enter. Now, before we jump into Fusion, let's just take a quick look at what we're going to be creating. So we have this 3D globe and we have some 3D text. We've given it some lights and it finishes off with these little 3D bars coming together and closing out our frame. So again, we're going to take a look at Fusion's 3D environment. Now, it's a real 3D environment, not a 2.5D environment. So we're going to have access to things like 3D objects, cameras, lights, etc. So let's go ahead and double click on our breaking news Fusion composition and jump right in. All right, we're inside of Fusion. Now, one thing you might notice is that we do not have a media in node that's coming from the timeline on the edit page. Remember, we started directly from the bin inside of Resolve, so this is a clean composition ready for us to get going. Let's go ahead and go to our 3D globe bin. And when you find the earth.tiff, let's just drag that in. I'm going to close down my media pool. Now, remember, the first thing we want to do is be organized. So let's go ahead and rename our node. And let's go ahead and view it in Viewer 1 by pressing the number 1 key. All right, so we can see that we have an image here of the Earth, and it has some transparency. I want to take this image, and I want to bring it into 3D. How would we do that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Let's go to our node toolbar and hover your mouse over each of these icons. And when you find the shape 3D, let's go ahead and bring that in to our node editor. All right, I'm going to load this shape 3D into viewer number 2. And just like that, by loading that node straight into that viewer, we have access to Fusion's 3D environment. We don't have to turn any 3D on, just load the node right into the viewer, and now we are inside of the 3D environment. Real quick, before we get into how do we move around in there, I just want to connect our Earth image, our 2D image, and just drag it onto our shape 3D. And as you can see right away, now we're using our 2D image on top of our shape 3D image plane right inside of Fusion. So it's going to be very important that we figure out how to navigate in here. As we animate, as we add objects, we're going to want to make sure that everything that we're doing is lining up exactly. So being able to navigate and orbit around inside of our 3D environment is going to become pretty crucial. And don't forget to make sure that you have a 3-button mouse, because that's going to really help as we're navigating around. So if you remember, we use the middle button mouse to move our 2D image around, just like we do in the node editor and in the viewer. And the same is true inside of our 3D view. We can use the middle mouse button to move around. Now, if you want to zoom, again, Command scroll wheel or Control on a PC, we can zoom in and out. And another way to navigate is to orbit around in 3D space. And we can do that with the Alt and middle mouse button. So I'm holding down my Alt, and then I'm using my middle mouse button to orbit around in 3D. Now I'm going to just kind of go a little bit crazy and move this around. And let's just pretend that something happened and I've lost my view and I can't find my way back. Well, that's fine. We can definitely reset our view. If we go down here to the left, bottom left of our viewer, there's this little perspective text with some 3D access points. Go ahead and right click on that. And we can go all the way down to settings and click on reset default. That's just going to bring us right back to our original position in 3D space. Now, just a reminder, we're moving around and we're orbiting, but we're not actually changing any 3D objects. This is just a perspective view of our 3D scene. You might have noticed inside of this perspective menu down here that there was other options for viewing different viewports. So we can view the front, we can view the top, and etc. I'm going to go back to the perspective view. Now, along with these controls down here, there's other controls up top on our viewer. We have some move, orbit, and scaling controls. We also have the ability to turn on some lighting. If we click on this, this is just going to give us a simulated lighting. It's not going to actually add any lights to your 3D scene. But as you'll see later on, we're going to need to be able to simulate some lights just so we can tell the dimensions of our objects and make sure that we're creating them properly. So I'm going to turn that off and just go with a flat look for now. Another important button is this quad view button. So let's go ahead and press that. And now that's presented us with 4 different views right inside of our single viewer. And we can see our top, front, right, and perspective. And we're going to need this, again, as we're creating and adding a lot of objects in 3D space. We're going to want to make sure that everything that we bring in is going to be in exactly the same place that we want it to be. So let's take a look. We want to take our 2D image and we want to wrap it around a sphere so it looks more like a globe. And I'm going to make sure that I have my Shape 3D node selected. In the inspector, under Shape, let's just change that from plane to sphere. And right away we can see that it's now a sphere. I just want to do a couple of changes real quick. I'm going to bring down the size, something like right around there. I think that should work. And I also want to bring up the subdivisions, the base and the height. That's just going to make sure that our surfaces are going to be nice and smooth around our sphere. Let me just zoom in. Again, Command or Control using my scroll wheel. Great. So now that we have our globe, I want to give it a little bit more of a hard surface. So I'm going to add a core to it. So let's just duplicate our Shape 3D node. Command C or Control C on a PC. I'm going to deselect and then just Command V to paste or Control V to paste. Again, we want to make sure that we're staying organized. So I'm going to start to label these for us. Shape 3D F2, and let's name this Earth Sphere. And the one that we just pasted, let's go ahead and rename that one to Core. Okay, now if we remember coming from the 2D side of our compositing, when we want to composite 2 elements together, we use the merge node, foreground over background. And it's a similar process inside of 3D, except for that the merge 3D, you can add as many different elements or objects as you want to each merge 3D. And it essentially becomes its own 3D environment, if you will. So let's go ahead and add a merge 3D. I'm going to bring it from our node toolbar and bring it right into my node editor. And now I'm just going to connect each of these together. Okay, we've connected our scene, but we're not seeing anything. And that's because we have to remember that we're viewing the proper node in the viewer. So with my Merge 3D node selected, I'm going to press 1 to view it in Viewer 1, and I'm going to press 2 to view it in Viewer 2. Because our viewers are independent, we can load the same node in both viewers at the same time. We have our core. I'm going to select that and let's make some changes to make it look a little bit better. Let's decrease its radius. And let's go over to its Materials tab and change the color to like a dark blue, something right around there. Maybe a little darker. Okay, I'm going to go to the specular values and I'm just going to bring down its intensity. All right, not bad. This is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and select our Earth sphere and make sure that our playhead is at the beginning of our comp. And let's go over to the transform controls of our Earth sphere. And what I would want to do is I want to animate the Y rotation. So first let me put it into position. I'm going to adjust this, bring it down. And I'm just going to find my starting point. I think that's good right about there. I'm going to set a keyframe using the white diamond check mark. It's changed orange, so now I know there's a keyframe set on that frame. I'm going to go to the end of our comp, and I'm just going to use this slider and move our globe like that. Okay, let's play this back. Perfect. We have our 3D globe now rotating across the whole length of our clip. It'd be really cool if we could maybe add some streaks orbiting around our globe. So to do that, I'm going to bring in another material. Let's go back to our media pool and find the streaks.psd, and let's just click and drag and bring that right in. I'm going to close my media pool. One thing you might notice is that we can bring Photoshop files directly into our node editor. And if you want, in the inspector, you can come over to the layer tab here and select any specific layer you want inside of that document. Now, for our purposes, we're fine using the merged view. So we're going to stick with that. I'm going to stop playback and I'm going to load our streaks into viewer 1. So I want to take our streaks, and like we did with the Earth, I want to wrap it around our sphere, our globe. So I'm going to select our core. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to click in the node editor to deselect and paste. Again, let's quickly rename this. All right, and let's go ahead and connect it to our Merge 3D. And let's go ahead and connect our streaks to our streak sphere. Okay, you might have seen a little bit of change happening in there. And on the viewer on the left, viewer number 1, we see our streaks are yellow. And on the viewer on the right, they look pretty dark. So just remember that since we copied and pasted our core, that it has that material of blue. So let's go back and reset that to white. And when we do, now we can see that this sphere is using the image values from our 2D image. Let's just change the size of this. Go back to the Controls tab, and under the radius, let's just bring it up a little bit. Well, that's a little too much. There we go. Right there should be fine. Okay, next thing, it would be nice if our streaks were orbiting or rotating around our sphere, and we can do that a couple different ways. The way that I want to do that and show you is using the 2D side of animation. So we're going to go ahead and animate our streaks in 2D and then let that dynamically flow into our 3D object. So let's go ahead and move our streaks back a little bit. If you remember, we can bring up tools and add nodes by using Shift Spacebar. That's going to bring up our Select Tool dialog box. And I'm just going to type in Transform. All right, in my viewer, I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. Make sure that you're looking at the transform node in viewer 1. And ideally, we want to animate the position of our streaks. And by doing that, it will start to rotate around our sphere. So I'm just going to move this all the way over, right till it's out of sight. And then with my playhead at the beginning of our comp, let's go over to our inspector and click on the white diamond next to the center parameter, setting ourselves a keyframe. And then let's go to the end of our comp and then just move our streaks right back into frame. And if we play that, we can look in our quad view and see how it's being animated around the globe. So not bad. I think that's pretty good. It kind of starts out of the middle of nowhere, and there's a side of the globe that's just pretty much empty. So what we can do is, still with our Transform 1 node selected, we come over here in the inspector and you see this edges parameter. Just change it from canvas to wrap. And now that's going to give ourselves a wrapping effect, which has our streaks all the way around our globe. That's pretty cool. All right, let me just adjust my UI real quick. Besides renaming our nodes, we want to make sure that we're staying organized inside of our node editor and organizing our nodes in a way that makes sense so we can quickly visually see each section of our node tree. So I'm just going to take my Earth and my streaks, drag them out here. I'm going to select all the nodes that have to deal with building our 3D globe. And I'm going to shift spacebar to bring up our select tool dialog box and type in underlay. I'm going to deselect it and then option click F2 to name it. Let's call this globe. And then right click and let's change its color to purple. That way we have all of our nodes associated with our globe contained together. Okay, let's do the same thing for our Earth and streaks. Essentially, these are our materials for our 3D objects, so we want to group these in the same manner. Shift spacebar, type in underlay, hit enter, deselect, option click F2 to name it, and let's type this materials. And then I'm going to right click and change its color as well to navy. Okay, as you saw in the demonstration earlier, we had some text that was kind of flying around our globe. So the next thing we want to do is add some 3D text and then give it some animation. Now, we could just add the 3D text directly to this merge 3D and essentially build all of our elements out of one merge 3D, but it might get a little cumbersome. So it'd be ideal if we could just create another merge 3D and then connect them together. That way we can work on one separately, but yet still have the outcome of everything put together in one. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to add another merge 3D, again from my toolbar, bring it right in, take the output of our merge from our globe and connect it to our new merge 3D. Let's view this in each of our viewers. So press 1 and press 2. Now let's go ahead and find our 3D text again in our node toolbar and just click and drag it right in and connect it to our new merge 3D. Okay, let's go ahead in the text field box in the inspector and type in our text. Breaking news. As we're typing, we can see it appear in each of our views. Again, having that quad view is great because now we can dial in exactly where it needs to be. So let's change a couple parameters. Let's change the line spacing. And let's go ahead and change our font from bold to extra bold italic. Next, we need to change down the size. So let's bring it down. Again, I'm watching in each of the viewers, seeing its size ratio to our globe. Using our quad view, I'm going to go ahead and grab this layers access points by just grabbing this blue z-axis point. And now you can see I'm just moving our text forward in 3D space. And then I'm going to grab this green axis point, and that is our y-axis control. I'm just going to move that up and down right about there. That's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to select my 3D text node and view that in viewer 1. And let's just put this in a better position, zoom in a little bit, because now we're ready to do some 3D extrusion. In the inspector, if you go down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see this little extrusion panel. Just go ahead and open that. And now let's just drag our extrusion depth out a little bit. Okay, so if you remember earlier, we were talking about that lighting button up here at the top of our viewer and that we were in a flat view. Right now, as you can see, it's a little bit hard to tell what's going on with our 3D text. So if we click this button, it's going to give us a simulated light effect. So now we can kind of see exactly what's going on with our text and how to make our extrusion work better for us. I think I'm going to make the extrusion just a little bit bigger. And then let's zoom in a little bit more, and we can start to add a bevel. So let's go to our bevel depth and just bring that up, maybe right around there. And the same thing for our bevel width. It's going to bring it down just a little bit. That's good. Just giving it a nice little edge. So we've added that. Let's actually change its color. In the 2D side of the text, if you look at it, the shading, you're used to seeing those shading elements 1 through 8. It's a little bit different. We're thinking of it more as materials inside of 3D. So let's go ahead and deselect this checkbox for use one material. And now we can change the color of our fonts, and let's just change it to a dark red. Just clicking in this color dialog box and just changing it to a dark red. Again, I want to go down to the specular intensity and just bring this down about halfway. Okay, not bad, looking pretty good. Now to me, this color is nice, it's clean, it's sharp. I want to give it just a little bit of breakup. So we can actually add a texture to this material by going to this type field and changing it from solid to image. And when we do that, now we have an option to connect an image directly to that. So I'm going to go back to the media pool, and I'm just going to grab this moon image, bring it right in, close down the media pool, and I just want to change the name of this and call it texture. You can use any image that you want that has the appropriate texture. In this case, I'm going to use this moon image and then just drag it over, connect it to my 3D text. And when you do, you can see that now it's affecting our 3D text. The luminance value of that texture image is affecting our 3D text. And for me, it's just giving a nice little breakup so it doesn't look completely clean. Now, there's a couple things that you can do just creatively. You can actually add a brightness contrast node to this and start to affect it in a lot of other ways. Like, for example, I'm just going to really start to crank down on this. And you can see how it's changing on the 3D text. So you can get interesting results by even animating in 2D and bringing that in as a texture on your 3D layers. But for right now, I'm good with the standard texture, so I'm going to delete that brightness contrast node. That's looking pretty good. All right, so as we can see in Viewer 2, we can see at our top view that the text is pretty much straight and flat. It'd be nice if we could bend or warp the text so it feels like it's coming around the globe. And we can do that by adding a node called the Bender node. So let's go ahead and select our 3D text, Shift Spacebar, and type in Bender, hit Enter. Now the Bender node is very interesting because it allows you to warp and bend your objects in 3D space. But we need to do a couple things first. And I'll give you an example. If we just start bending this, it's going to start to really twist and warp. I'm going to press 1 to load that in Viewer 1. As you can see, it's just kind of giving it some crazy adjustments. So if we go ahead and first click on Group Objects, it's going to treat it as one object and not as individual letters. And let's change the angle to about 90. And let's change our axis to X from Y. And now when we bend, you can see that it's actually starting to go around our globe. Now I want to make sure that this is going to be visible and that's not too warped. So let's just bring this back just a little bit. We definitely want to make sure that it's viewable. Something like that is good. Next, it'd be great if we can start to animate that around the globe. So if we click on the 3D text and we go to the Layout tab, there's a rotation option there for our Y-axis. We can change that, but as you can see, I'm moving it and the pivot point is right on the text, and that's not what we want. So what else could we do? Maybe the transform node. Let's try this one. Well, this is kind of cool, actually. Maybe we can animate this as well, but that's not what I want either. Again, thinking about nodes and thinking about node order, if we stack our nodes accordingly, we can get really interesting results. In this case, everything that we've been doing is to the center origin point of our 3D environment. So we really haven't been moving things around. So if we add a transform 3D node, it'll actually be at the center of our 3D globe, which will allow us to rotate our text right around. Let me demonstrate that. My Bender node selected, Shift spacebar, type in transform. I'm going to use my arrow keys to go down to the transform 3D node and then press enter. And you can see it now, it's been applied to the center of our 3D globe. When we move our y-axis, it's now moving all of our text around our globe. I'm going to load our Merge 3D in Viewer 1 just so we can see that as well. So let me move this into position. I think I want it to start right around here. Make sure our playhead is at the beginning of our comp. And let's set a keyframe for our Y rotation on our Transform 3D node. And then let's go to about frame 20 and let's move our Y rotation somewhere right around here. I'm clicking in the text dialog box to get a little bit finer control. That way my movements are a little bit smoother. Okay, so that's where I want it to land. It's coming from around the globe and I want it to land here at frame 20. Let's go to the end of our comp and then let's continue dragging this over till it's right about there. Again, it's important that even though we're animating, we want to be able to see it so we can read it. But just giving us a little bit of movement to keep things in action. All right, let's play this back. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Now, I remember that 3D text that we did earlier that we saw the rotation of the letters. I kind of like that. Let's go back to our 3D text real quick. And let's go to our hero frame of frame 20. We're in the transform. Let's just move our text. Yeah, I think I like this. Let's reset it. And let's set a keyframe right here at frame 20. Let's go to the beginning of our comp. And we're going to move or animate this Y rotation. Again, I'm looking at all the different views to see how these texts are moving and making sure that it's in the right spot that I want. So I think this is right about where it should be. Let's play this back. Okay, the playback is pretty long, so I'm going to adjust my auto render range so we can focus just on the area that we want to. So holding down the command key, clicking and dragging inside of our time ruler, now we've just isolated our playback just to this moment. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now it would be great if we could add a 3D camera to this so we can complete our motion coming from out of the globe and revealing everything at once. So let's do that right now. I'm just going to move my node editor around. Again, come up to the node toolbar, just bring in a camera 3D and connect it to our Merge 3D. If you've seen here, now once we connected that camera, it pops up at the center point of our 3D environment. So I'm going to grab its Z-axis arrow point and just move this back. So as I'm moving the camera, as you can see, we can't really tell what it's seeing. So it would be nice if we could see the view of the camera so we know how far back we need to move it. And we can do that if you come back here to our viewer number 1, down here at the bottom right, there's our perspective view. Let's right click on that. And because we have a camera added, we can now just click directly on our 3D camera. And when we do so, now we're seeing exactly what the camera sees. So when we move it, we can know exactly what we're looking at. Let me just zoom out of this view. And I'm going to move this camera back right about here. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. So let's call this our hero frame. Now, as we move our camera back, we can actually see what it's seeing and get a better view of where we want to stop our camera. I want to find our hero frame. And I think that's right about here. That looks pretty good. Okay, now we're ready to animate our camera. So let's go to the inspector and just right click on this translation group and say animate translation group. That's just going to put a keyframe on our X, Y, and Z axis all at one time. And I'm going to do the same thing for the rotation as well. right click, animate, rotate group. So this is our hero frame, right about frame 18. Let's go to the beginning of our comp, and we're going to just move our camera forward. Just like that. And let's bring it down just a little bit. And then let's animate its x-axis right around there. And let's also give it a little rotation on the z-axis. And then let's just change our X position and zoom in a little bit more. Somewhere right around here. And let's see what that does. Okay. That's working. Now let's finish this off by going to the end of our comp and adding a slow little pullback on our camera. So clicking to the end of our comp. And then just using the slider right on the z-axis and pulling it back just a little bit. So if we play this all back together now, we've animated our 3D globe, we've animated our text coming around, and now we've just animated a camera pulling back, revealing the globe and our text together. I'm going to go back to that keyframe and just make it a little bit stronger. Somewhere there, just to double check. Let's see what that looks like. Pretty cool. The next thing I want to do to finish this off, just as we reveal our breaking news, I want to have a wall come in and transition us to our next art card. So let's add another text 3D node connected to our merge 3D. And in the inspector, click on the / about 6 times. All right, so we've added this to our view. Let's go ahead and bring it forward. I'm going to zoom out, Command middle mouse button, and then Option middle mouse button to orbit. I'm going to bring this right around here. Again, using all of my viewports to see and move my 3D objects as needed. Bring this forward right about here. And let's scrub our timeline just to see how this is going to look. Yeah, I think this is going to work. I think this is going to work. Let's go back one more time. Let's go and give this a little bit of extrusion, just like we did before. Going to go ahead and just bring this up. And the same thing, a little bit of bevel depth and bevel width. That's working pretty good. The next thing we want to do is we want this to collapse and close down as if it's a wall shutting down. Let's find a spot we can start our animation. I think right in here around frame 70. And let's put a keyframe on our tracking. So add a keyframe, move forward about 20 frames or so, and then let's just bring down our tracking right until everything closes up. And then let's play that back. There we go. I think that's working. Lastly, I just want to change the color of this to red. So let's go to our shading tab and then just bring this down to a dark red as well. Okay. So let's just review real quick. I'm going to move my UI around. We've added our materials. We've got our earth, our streaks, our texture. Now we've brought that into 3D and connected it or mapped it onto some sphere objects, creating a globe. And we've organized it and used an underlay to group that together. Next, we've gone to another merge 3D and we've added our text, given it some animation, and also warped it as a 3D object and animated our camera as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing real quick while we're here and give this an underlay just so we stay organized. Option click F2 to rename text 3D. And one last thing, I just want to go over here and select our camera 3D. I'm going to right click on there and go to show tile picture. And that's just an organizational feature for myself. So that way, as I'm moving and navigating across the node tree, I can quickly see and know which node is my camera, as I'm going to want to use it a lot. I think now we should open up the spline editor and start to look at our keyframes and make sure that all of our movements are nice and smooth. And the spline editor is a great way to start doing that. So I've got the spline editor open. Again, this panel on the left is going to show me all of our adjustments, all of our nodes that have keyframes. And then on the right is our graph view. Now, there's a lot of keyframes that we've been setting, so I'm just going to help focus our attention by going to the top right of our spline editor and clicking on this menu and selecting Show Only Selected Tool. That just lets us select a node and just see those parameters in the spline editor for us. Let's start with our 3D text. I'm going to select the 3D text and then load it in Viewer 1. Just so we can see that. In the spline editor, let's turn on our character angle Y by clicking on that checkbox. Now, it's got a zoomed in value. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So there's this button right up here at the top right. There's these 3 buttons, our menu that we clicked on earlier. Next is our zoom to rectangle. And then next to that is zoom to fit. If you click that, that'll just bring all of our keyframes and fit it inside of our spline editor for us. As a side note, a keyboard shortcut for that is Command F or Control F on a PC. So we can see here that our animation is happening in a linear fashion. So I just want to smooth this landing by selecting this last keyframe and pressing Shift S. That's just going to smooth out our landing over time. And I can go back here to the beginning of our comp and play that back. That's going to work just fine. Next, let's go to the next node that has our animation, our transform 3D node. Press 1 to view that. Again, I'm going to Command, click and drag inside of the time ruler just so we can focus on this one part of our comp. With our transform 3D node selected, inside of our spline, let's turn on the Y rotation. Command F fits that for us. And we can see the keyframes that we have. I'm going to select these last 2, just drag a box right around there. Shift S for smooth. I'm going to smooth those keyframes. Now, we need to do some adjustments. So bring down our middle keyframe. Just adjust its tangents so it's nice and smooth. And let's see what that looks like. So before, it was animating in and kind of having a hard stop and then continuing. And now it's animating in, but continuing in a nice, smooth fashion. Next, let's go to our camera 3D. And I'm going to select our Merge 3D and press number 1 to view that. Remember, we have our viewport is set to our camera 3D. So don't forget that we're not in perspective mode. If we were to make any changes using our navigation tool, it would actually be changing the animation of our camera. So we're viewing the camera 3D, but don't use any type of navigational features just yet in that viewport. So as we play, we're coming back. We've got a kind of a hard landing. So we want to smooth that landing of the camera so it's nice and easy. Select our camera 3D. And let's go ahead and turn on the Z offset inside of the spline editor. We're in the spline editor, Command F or Control F zooms our keyframes so we can see them all. And it's the same process. Select the keyframe, Shift S, select this final keyframe and Shift S as well. And let's just adjust this, making it nice and smooth. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's a good start. Let's move from here and turn on our X and Y rotation. Command F. I'm going to select all of our final keyframes, and instead of hitting Shift S for smooth, I'm just going to hit the F key, and that's for flat. It's just going to make sure that our tangents are not going above the values they're supposed to and just flattening off that curve for us. So let's play that back. That's feeling a lot smoother. Now, as we're doing this, as we've been changing our keyframes, our animation for our wall is a little bit off now. So we need to go back and just adjust that real quick. So right around frame 40, 45 is where it's coming in. And I want to just bring it closer so it's coming in a little bit later. So let's go to about frame 60. And let's select our 3D text node. And while we're here, just press F2 and let's call that wall, just so we stay organized. In my perspective view in viewer 2, I'm just going to click on the Z-axis and just bring it closer to the camera. I'm going to adjust my auto render range, and then let's just play this back. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now let's go and adjust our keyframes for our wall. So in the spline editor, let's go ahead and turn on character spacing. Again, we can't see our keyframes, so Command F or Control F will just bring all of our keyframes right into view for us. And for the most part, we've been adjusting our keyframes so that everything that happens smoothly, and that makes for a better looking image. But in this case, we want our wall to be able to animate nice and fast and hard. So we're going to change how we approach our keyframes. Select our first keyframe and let's press F. And let's take our last keyframe and adjust the tangent just so it slams into place. And I'm going to adjust my auto render range. There we go. So the animation starts off slow and then comes to a quick close. Now, as I'm watching it back, I would like that wall to close down just a tad bit sooner. So what we can do, we fit our keyframes in. Let's just draw a bounding box around them, select them. I'm going to change the size of our spline editor a little bit. And you notice here at the bottom of our spline editor, there's this little drop-down menu called Time. If you click on it, let's go to the T offset. I just want to adjust the framing of our keyframes. So I'm going to double click in there and just type in -10. I just want to move these keyframes back in time, just about 10 frames. And let's play that back. Maybe even move that back a little bit more. So make sure my keyframes are selected, switch to time offset, and let's go back -5. Okay, great. That's exactly what we want. So again, using the spline editor to really finesse your keyframes to make sure that everything is animating over time in a smooth fashion or an opposite, in a hard fashion, coming down very quickly. So definitely take a look at the spline editor when you have a chance. Now, this whole time we've been working inside of Fusion's 3D environment, we're not actually in 2D. So we need to bring all of our 3D animation and effects and bring it into 2D so we can add some look effects and finish off our composite. But we can't just connect any of these 3D nodes to a 2D node. We actually have to render it out into a 2D image. So to do that, we're going to add a render node. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to move my node editor around, move my media out node over to the side. And again, in the toolbar, just click and drag your render node into your node editor. Now, the last node or last scene that we have in 3D is our merge 3D 2, which is our text and camera. So just take the output of that node and connect it to the input of our render 3D node. And then I'm going to take the output of our render 3D node and connect it to the input of the media out 1 node. Let's view the media out 1 in viewer number 1. And let's scrub our timeline. And so now we can see that we've rendered out our 3D and placed it into 2D. And actually, it looks kind of flat. And that's because we don't have any lights or any dimension happening. Let's get that going. Let's set that up. Select the Render 3D node. Now, inside the Render 3D node, there's a lot of different options that you can choose to create depth of field effects, turn on lighting effects, change the different types of renderers that you want to use, or even turn on and show different types of outputs for your Render 3D. For our purposes right now, we're just going to change the render type from software to OpenGL. And we're going to enable our lighting. So right away in Viewer 1, you can see that when we enabled lighting, everything went dark. That's because we're saying that we want to use lights, but we have no lights in our 3D scene. So now let's go back, let's add some 3D lights and bring this animation to life. I'm just going to move my Render 3D and Media Out node over to the right just a little bit. And again, I want to be able to add my 3D lights, but have the option to have control in the node editor. So let's add a new Merge 3D. Just bring it right into our 3D pipeline. And I'm going to go ahead and press 2 to load that into Viewer 2. Now, up to this point, we've been adding nodes and adding tools, going to the effects library, going to the node toolbar, and even using the keyboard shortcut Shift Spacebar. But one of the cool things about Fusion is that you can actually customize your node toolbar as you see fit. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, just so we can get our 3D scene ready. Now, if you right-click up in any of the area of the node toolbar, you can go over to Customize and say Create Toolbar. Now, all we can do is go up to the effects library, and we can just drag any tool that we need directly into our toolbar. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the point light and the directional light, as we're going to be using those. I'm going to close down my effects library, and I have the spotlight here. I'm just going to move this into place right where I want it. And then in between the render node and the spotlight node, I'm just going to right-click there and say Customize Add Divider. So this is a really great way to customize your toolbar based on the different types of workflows that you might need, and then recall them as needed. The first thing I'm going to do is add our point light. So I'm going to bring that right into our node editor, connect it to our Merge 3D, and you can see the effects happening already. Let's make some adjustments to it. First of all, I'm going to rename this. Blue light. And in the inspector, let's go ahead and change its color. Give it a blue color. And let's change its decay type to linear. And we can bring down its intensity a little bit. So now this really comes down to using our viewers to dial in the position of our lights as needed. So we're going to find a good spot where these lights should go. I think something right around here might just work. I'm trying to find a good little spot, a good angle where it catches as many of the different bevels as it can. That's good for now. I'm going to bring down its intensity just a little bit more. Let's take this node, copy it, Command-C or Control-C, deselect, and paste that back into our node editor. Let's rename it Yellow Light, and let's attach it to our Merge 3D. And in our viewports on Viewer 2, let's just move it over to the other side. And again, just find a good little spot for it. Use my perspective view, zoom in, move it back, and move it over. Again, I'm watching my Viewer 1 just to see how it's affecting my scene. Now, real quick, let's go to the color for that in the inspector and change it to an orange. Nice little orange. Somewhere right around here. And as we create and as we build, we're going to end up coming back and tweaking this once we see it playing back in animation. There we go. I'm going to still adjust it just a little bit, bring it back. That's kind of cool right there. Okay, perfect. So we've got our two side lights. Let's go ahead and add a different type of light, and that is our directional light. Bring it right in, connect it to our Merge 3D, and I'm going to rename this and call it Top Light. And in the inspector, let's go ahead and just rotate on the x-axis until it's right above. Again, just finding a good flavor that works. All right, in the controls panel, I'm just going to bring down its intensity just a little bit. And let's do the same thing. I'm going to copy this light, deselect and paste it, and then connect it to the Merge 3D. Now let's rename that light F2 and call it the bottom light. And in the inspector, let's go ahead and change its color to a light pink. And then in the transform parameters, let's just rotate its transform all the way down to the bottom. And as you can see, it's just starting to give a little bit of highlight to the bottom of our text. Now, at any point in time, you can turn on and off a node at the top of the inspector by hitting this toggle switch and seeing the effects of it on and off. Or you can also just, in the node editor, command select any amount of nodes you want and hit Command P or Control P on a PC and just turn on and off those nodes. So it's a great way to toggle on and off to see the effects of those nodes. We're getting there. Let's go ahead and add a spotlight now. We want to light up the front face of our font. So I added a spotlight. I'm going to rename that Front Left. And then let's go ahead and connect that, you guessed it, right to the Merge 3D. Now the spotlight is in the center point of our 3D space, which is our globe. So I'm going to use the transform controls to bring that spotlight out. There we go. Now let's move that over to the left. Now as you see, I'm using the access points on this light directly. Now we have the spotlight. It comes down to rotating our light. And we can do that in the inspector, but you can also do that right inside of your viewer. If you look here at the top of the viewer, there's these two buttons. We have a move button and a rotate button. With my light selected, if I click that rotate button, it's going to give me different parameter controls so that I can rotate my light inside of my viewport. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to rotate this light just like that. A quick way to do that is to use the keyboard shortcut Q for move or W for rotate. So let's just move it back. Let's go to our inspector in the controls and change its decay type to linear. Increase the penumbra angle, just softening its light effect and bringing down its intensity. Now, one thing I'm seeing is on the text 3D node, it's giving a lot of reflection. So I just want to go back to the text 3D, select it, go to the shading tab, and just bring down its specular intensity. Just like that. Okay, so we have our front light, our front left light, and I'm just going to move it again just a little bit, just to see what it's doing, lighting up the front of our text. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to Command C to copy it, deselect our node editor, and then paste it in, connect it to our Merge 3D, and let's rename that Front Right. And now we need to move this light over to the other side. So I'm going to press, in my viewport, I'm going to press W and rotate this light first. Now I'm going to press Q, move it over to the right side, press W, and rotate this into position. And I can toggle this on and off and see its effects. I want to bring down its intensity just a little bit. And now if we scrub our timeline, we can see that now we've started to give a little life to our animation using some lights. Just 2 more lights to add. Let's go ahead and add a backlight. We're going to use another spotlight, and let's rename that and call it backlight. And let's connect that in. Again, it's at the center point of our 3D space, which is right in the center of our 3D globe. So all we need to do is just rotate it 180 degrees. So in the rotation field, let's go ahead and just move our y-axis about 180 degrees. And then we can just change its position forward or back. And you can see that it's starting to kind of give little highlight pings on our text. So I'm just moving it and finding a good spot somewhere right there. All right, that's pretty cool. The next thing we need to do is we need to give a light to our 3D wall. Right now when it closes, it's pretty dark and we can't see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and add another little point light just to kind of give a little illumination to our 3D wall. So let's bring in a point light and then let's rename it and call it wall light. Connect it to our merge 3D. And in the inspector under transforms, let's just go ahead and drag our Z-axis translation right over to our 3D wall. I'm going to zoom in here. And let's make a couple different changes. In the controls panel, let's go to our decay type and go to quadratic, and let's bring down the intensity. And let's change the color to a little bit of a red light. All right. Now I'm going to just bring this up, just giving it a nice little gradient. Now let's see if we scrubbed our timeline. Let's take a look. Okay, not bad. Let's go to our perspective view here. And let's bring it a little bit further away. There we go. So now as we're scrubbing, we're just giving a little bit of life to that 3D wall so it's not completely dark. We've added our lights. It's looking good. Let's not forget our organization and add an underlay to these lights. I'm going to deselect, option click. Let's rename this lights 3D. And then let's give it a new color, teal. So we've added all of our 3D lights. We've completed the look for our 3D renderer. Now we need to go into the 2D realm and start to add some glows and some effects to really bring our animation together. But the first thing that you might have noticed is that our render has an alpha channel. So we need to add a background to it. So let's do that by adding a background node. I'm going to go to the toolbar and just bring in a background node. And I want to go ahead and view that in Viewer 2. Now, I really do like the background node. It's a pretty powerful node that gives you a lot of flexibility in all the different types of animation that you might be doing. For our purposes, we're going to convert this solid image into a gradient. So let's go to the background node in the inspector, let's go to our type here and change it from solid color to gradient. There's a lot of different tools for you to use to manipulate and change your gradients. We're just going to go with a simple blue gradient. In the viewer, I'm going to just use these on-screen controls to make a shape just like this. And in this gradient, this color tab here, there's these two white triangles. If you click on a triangle, now you can actually change that color. So I clicked on this triangle on the left, and I'm going to change its color to something like a blue, and just give it a nice little light blue. And the triangle on the right, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make it a really dark blue. Now, right up here at the top of this gradient is gradient type. I'm going to switch that from linear to radial. So now we have this nice little radial background. Let's add a merge node. After our render 3D, let's connect the background to our merge. Now, in this case, as you see, we've added a background to our merge, but it's actually in the wrong order. It's actually covering up our render 3D, and that's fine. We can actually change that. So select the merge 3D, Command T, that's going to swap our inputs automatically. We don't have to disconnect and reconnect. Just Command T will swap our inputs for us, just like that. So now we can see our composite in context, and I like where that's going. That's pretty good. Maybe we can select our background node and just make another quick adjustment, selecting that triangle on the left, keeping it a little bit brighter. That's going to work just fine. I want to add another background node just because I love the background node so much. Press 2 to view that in Viewer 2. And let's change its color here to a little bit of a pink red. I want to add an ellipse mask to that. So let's go ahead and connect our ellipse mask to our background. And then let's just composite this right over our merge 1. Again, taking the output of our background node and connecting it to the output of our merge node. When we release, it's going to add a merge for us automatically. Now, this is covering up our image, and that's fine. We're going to go make some adjustments to our ellipse mask. Let's go to the soft edge and just bring this down. Change the shape just like that. And let's just move this mask somewhere down in here. Now, select the Merge 2, and let's take a look at its controls. Now, if you're familiar with using composite modes and other applications to kind of create cool, interesting lighting effects, you can do all that here inside the Merge node. But there's one tool that you might have not seen, and that's the Add composite mode. Well, in Fusion, it's actually as a slider. It's called alpha gain. So if we click this slider, we can actually dial in the level of add that we want instead of just having it as a one-time feature. So I'm just going to bring this down somewhere right in here, giving it a nice little bright pop, balancing that out with the blend tool, just to give it a little bit of atmosphere. Again, it's a subtle feature, but just enough to give us a little bit of atmosphere to make this come to life. That's working nice. Let's keep going. I'm going to just give ourselves a little bit more room here. Now, real quick, select the Merge 2, Shift Spacebar, and let's go ahead and type in glow. Hit Enter. Now, let's go over to our inspector, and under Apply Mode, let's change that to Threshold. And let's bring down the glow just a little bit. We don't want to go too crazy. Again, toggle that on and off just to see the effects that we're getting. Also, I want to focus just on my image. So I'm going to go over here to Viewer 1 and click this Single Viewer Mode. That's just going to eliminate the other viewer and allow me to just focus directly on what we're working on and see it a little bit bigger and cleaner. We've got our glow. We're toggling it on and off. I think that's going to work for us. Right away, let's add another node, Soft Glow. And let's go to the threshold, bring this down, all the way down. And let's bring the gain down too while we're at it, making just a subtle little effect. I'm going to toggle that on and off. It's just giving us a nice little highlight. Now let's go ahead and add a brightness contrast node. And we just want to clamp all this down and bring our gamma down just right around here. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to scrub through my timeline. That's looking pretty good, but I want to go back and add a little bit more realism by adding some motion blur. Now there's a couple ways that we can do that. And the way that we're going to do it here is we're going to do it after our 3D render. So let's make a little bit of room. Let's select our 3D render node and shift spacebar and type in vector, and then use our arrow tools to go down to the vector motion blur. And let's add our vector motion blur. Now, this is going to require that we actually have a vector X and a vector Y channel. And we can turn that on inside of our render 3D node and make it available on our vector blur. So let's go ahead and do that. In the render 3D node, let's go over here to output channels and just click on the vector channel. And now when we scrub, we can see that we've added some nice looking motion blur to our animation. And it just gives it that other extra sense of realism. I just want to do a couple more things. And again, remind you that we have access to all the great plugins available through Resolve Effects right inside of Fusion. Resolve Effects Light, and let's add some lens reflections. Again, just little subtle things to help bring your animation to life. And this is up to you as far as how far you want to take it. But for our case, we're just going to bring this down just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of pop. I like that. That'll work just fine. And then I just want to finish this off with using some Resolve Effects texture and bringing in some film grain. And I just want to go over here to the film grain presets and adjust that to 35 millimeter. Change this to hard light, bring up our opacity, and then change the symmetry, bring it down just a little bit, just giving us a nice little effect. And lastly, I just want to review everything that we did. If we go back to the beginning, we started off with our materials, all of our images, brought them into 3D, did some animation with our globe, also brought in our camera and 3D text and animated those as well. Finally, our lights, adding that zing and pop to make sure that our animation looks really, really good. We brought that into 2D from 3D, added some really cool look effects, some glows, some film grain, using Resolve Effects as well, really to finish and polish off our look. Now let's just take a look real quick, step through our animation, and we can see how this is coming together. Really, really cool. I hope that you can see the flexibility and power that Fusion has by both having a full 3D environment as well as a 2D environment. If you have any questions, don't forget to go to blackmagicdesign.com, go to their forums page. Also, all of these lessons plans are available on their training page, and you can even find a way to get certified. Thanks for watching. Take what you learn and make it better.